Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Easy Trimester here. So I've been wanting to do a Sportster versus Scout video for some time, and been trying to get a hold of each bike, but it's kind of difficult to get them side by side brand new from respective dealerships, maybe because they're such fierce competitors. I don't know, but figure we don't need the bikes. Y'all can look them up if you need to. Go to your local dealership, check them out. But I've had experience with both of those motorcycles. I've had two Sportsters. I had a 2010 Sportster 48 and I had a 2014 Sportster 72. I've also ridden some 883s and some Iron 1200s. And then as far as the Polaris stuff, I had a Victory Octane for some time, which is very much like the Scout. And through Dean Speed Customs, spent a lot of time working on and riding an Indian Scout. So just to give you the overview of what's on paper, if you will, of these two motorcycles, and coincidentally, I would have liked to have compared the Sportster 1200 Custom to the Scout, because I feel like it's a little more similar, but right now, as far as 2020 is concerned, the Iron 1200 would be the best comparative to a 2020 Scout 1200. So the the price difference is, it looks like it's about $1,000 swing in favor of the Harley being a little bit cheaper. They both are going to come with a 2-year manufacturer warranty, which is nice. And kind of a summary overview of each of these motorcycles. The Scout has a little bit more ground clearance. The wheelbase on the Sportster is shorter. The fuel capacity on these two bikes is identical, 3.3 gallons. The seat height is the same. And I'm reading this off of some paper, as I basically did some research and jotted some stuff down, but I wanted to run through this and then tell you my personal experience with these motorcycles and what my likes, dislikes, and what ultimately at the end of the day I would pick. Now the weight of the Sportster is about 15 pounds lighter, and then you get into performance. The lean angle is very similar, the fuel economy is very similar, the torque is very similar, and I don't know that I have a verified source on this, but Indian claims 100 horsepower on the Indian Scout, while the Sportster seems to be in the 70s range. A major difference between both of these is the V-twin on the Harley's air-cooled and it's liquid-cooled on the Scout. It looks like there's a little bit better braking on the Sportster with a dual piston rear caliper, while the Indian has a single piston rear caliper. And then I think the most notable difference is the 6th gear overdrive, if you will, on the Scout versus the Sportster only having a 5-speed. So that's what's on paper. That's the overview. It's probably not a whole lot of that is so overwhelmingly exciting, but I think what's important is to talk about my experience with these motorcycles. They both have great attributes. I would say that when it comes down to performance, when we talked about the Scout having a little bit more horsepower, it's noticeable. My Octane arguably could best the V-Rod, at least is where I read on some platforms. Scout, I don't believe has as much power as the Octane, but it's very close. So it is my experience, at least in riding the motorcycle's responsiveness, that the Scout has more power, quicker acceleration. Based off of numbers, these bikes appear to handle the same, but their characteristics of handling are different. I think it's the tube frame versus the cast frame, the angle of the rear shocks. Those things play a factor. I think that the Scout tends to have a little bit higher speed better handling at higher speed. I've dragged peg on both bikes, so as far as their lean angle and clearance, it's very similar. Nothing to write home about. Now, the Scout having a 6-gear overdrive cruise gear and being liquid cooled, I think those are important things to mention, because what do you want out of your motorcycle? 5th gear on a Sportster on the freeway does not feel like it's at home doing what it's supposed to do. I mean, it can do it, right? But comfortably, not really. Scout is more naturally in its element at that gear and speed. It's also liquid cooled and lends a more refined feel, both in the throttle, the braking, the handling, and that's the cast frame, liquid cooled engine, etc. Now, the Harley is a little bit cheaper, and I think their resale value is unquestionable. And there's history in both brands, but I feel like Harley's is a little more uninterrupted history. And then, and this is just what matters to you guys as motorcyclists. And lastly, I would say that because we have an air-cooled engine in a tube frame, Harleys, in my opinion, tend to have a little more character. They're not as refined feeling. I mean, they're just as modern as the Scout, but they're not as refined feeling as the Scout. Now, I guess this really comes down to what my final thoughts are. On the long ride, like a long ride, like all-day ride, miles and miles, twisties, freeway, I'd likely pick the Scout because of that 6th gear and because of the refinement. It's going to be a more comfortable ride, I think. But in regards to feeling a connection to the motorcycle and a connection to over 100 years of manufacturer history, I'm going to pick the Harley. I think that it has a noticeable character difference over the Scout, sound, the aesthetics, and then again the connection to from rider to motorcycle. So around town, I'm gonna pick not just around town, but around town, and to take it to shows, you know, something to be proud of. Personally, I feel more inclined to have the Sportster. So I realize that a lot of what I said may be controversial and disputed and frustrate some people and whatnot, and that's fine. You know, this stuff doesn't usually come without those things. But know that I am not brand biased in any way. This is completely impartial, if you will, view, in the way that I've had both, technically speaking, and I enjoyed them both. And I've had many other motorcycle brands that have enjoyed them too. So I hope you guys have benefited from this. If you have any questions and you're in the market or shopping, just put it in the comments. I'll be happy to tell you what I've experienced, what I've thought of each of these bikes, and what I think of them now. So, and again, if it's a helpful video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, because we've always got good stuff we're talking about on motorcycles. And as always, guys, stay safe out there.